So first of all, the topic today is Admin Console first steps. There's going to be a lot of great information for you. We're not going to cover migrating to Google Apps or MX Records or anything like that, but we will cover the initial steps you need to take when you access your Admin Console for the first time, or if you're just getting started with Google Apps. First of all, I'd like to go ahead and introduce Gary Flewitt, who's going to talk about the Google Apps Administrator Certification Exam. He's the certification manager at Google, so he's really the authority on this exam. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gary, who's going to talk a little bit more about the exam. Go ahead, Gary.
Hey guys, thanks for having me this morning. Yeah, the admin certification it's a new thing, so you might not be aware of it. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about it and introduce you to it. You know, we've released it, but it's not something that we're promoting just yet. It's still kind of a soft launch, so you're getting an early look at it. And so what I wanted to do today was just take a couple of minutes to share with you what it's about and how you take the exam. It's a little bit unique in the way that that we deliver it. And then I'll hand it back over to Andrew, and we can get you back onto your regular training. So the admin certification would be a great thing to sort of end your training with, or if you've been an admin for a while, it might be something that you'd like to try and get that admin certification and have that badge and have that certificate and be able to kind of promote yourself as a qualified Google-recognized certified admin. So let me just show you a couple of slides about the admin certification. So what is it? First of all, it's a 2-hour exam, and it's timed. So once you start the exam, you have 2 hours to complete it, and it's taken completely within the admin console. The screen that you're seeing there in the slide is this application called the Examinator, and this app runs in App Engine, and it kind of controls your access to a trial domain. It's a real live domain. It's provisioned for you for the purpose of taking the exam. And when we provision the domain, we kind of screw it up a little bit. We add some users and some groups, and we kind of pre-configure the domain, and then we ask you to go in and administrate that domain to a certain set of scenario problems. So it is done in the admin console, and so it's just your typical admin environment in a trial domain. It might look a little bit different than your admin console depending on what you're used to, but it is just a regular old public trial domain. There's about 45 tasks in the exam, and they're just typical everyday administrator tasks. I'll show you one here in just a minute. And they're word problems. So basically what you can see here is that you launch the admin console, you log in, and as soon as you start the exam, the application changes your user permissions to super admin, so it allows you to go in and configure the domain. And then you come back to this application and you open up a document. You won't have access to these documents until you start the exam. Once you start the exam, the application puts you into a group that allows you to access these documents. And each document has a number of problems. And you just read through the document and you go back to the admin console and you set it up. And you can test it yourself. You can even look at the audit log reports and see that you're doing it correctly. You have access to the help files. You have access to the web. It's completely open book. You're not locked down into any environment, and you're not required to use any kind of special webcam. We do use WebRTC over in one of these windows to just take pictures of you throughout the exam, just to make sure it's the same guy taking the exam throughout the course of the 2 hours. And then what you do is you just go through the exam, configure the entire domain, and then when you're done, you submit it. And when you submit your exam, then it's automatically graded by a bunch of API calls. So the application that is kind of managing this whole thing runs a whole host of API calls, about 100 API calls against the domain, to see if you've configured it correctly, and then it brings back a score and tells you whether you passed or failed. So it happens immediately. You don't have to wait for any of us to grade it, and it's all machine graded right there at the end. So you'll get your results right then, and then about a day later, if you've passed, you'll get a certificate and badges and all that good stuff. So it's kind of a unique exam in that it's done completely hands-on in the admin console. We don't ask you any multiple choice questions. We give you access to all the help docs and stuff, so you should have a pretty good experience. I will tell you that about 1 out of 4 people fail the exam currently, and usually it's because they make a mistake on something really simple, spelling errors that change the name of a user, for instance, and so the API calls don't work. So you have to be really careful with the details, but it's all pretty standard stuff. In fact, let me show you a typical exam question from the certification. Alex has contacted you in a panic because he left his tablet on the bus. He was logged into a corporate Gmail account while he was on that tablet, and so your task is to log him off of any active sessions and force him to authenticate on his next login. Pretty simple stuff. This is the kinds of things that admins get every day. There's about 45 different questions, and they go through various sections of the admin console. This is kind of a ranking of the weight of the exam. So most of it, well, I'd say about 1/5 of it is just user creation, deletion, and general administration of users. So that's where you spend most of your time. There's a couple of questions on mail delivery and routing, filtering, that stuff that happens in Gmail settings. You'll be setting up services and organizations, giving organizational access to various Google Apps services. Groups is kind of a tough section because a lot of people don't use groups for business. So I would suggest you study up on your groups and some of the services there, because sometimes it's hard to find those peculiar little settings in groups for business. You'll set up some organizational units, do a little bit of security, activate some mobile policies, and a very brief section on calendar. So that's kind of how the exam stacks up. And then once you're done, if you get certified, then you'll get some logos that you can put on your you can put them on your shirt for all I care. You can put them on your business card, put them into your LinkedIn profiles. You'll also be, if you're part of the Google Enterprise Connect, if you're an enterprise customer, you'll get some badges that you can show in your profile there. You'll get a certificate signed by Amit, and that you can hang proudly in your office or wherever. And then you'll also be added to a very exclusive LinkedIn group, and there's about 100 people in there currently. So there's more than that, I think, now. There are about 300 people who have taken the exam, and we've got really good feedback from it so far. People love taking the exam in the admin console and getting getting their hands right into the to the Google Apps domain. So that's all I've got for information about the exam. If you want to find out more, I'd recommend you go to this website, certification.googleapps.com, and you'll see that there's some information on the other certifications that we have available as well. The deployment specialist, sales certification is just for our partners, but there's some more details here, particularly around the study guide, so you can get more details. And if you want to study for that, those particular sections, those are linked to the help docs. So that's about it for me, and I'd like to hand it back to Andrew now.
All right, thanks a lot, Gary. Lots of really good information there. Before I let you go, it looks like we have a couple questions about the exam. I know this exam differs from the sales and deployment exam in that correct me if I'm wrong, there's no camera necessary for this exam, correct?
That's correct. There's no special webcam. You will need a webcam, but you can use the webcam on your laptop or on your desktop. Any webcam will work.
Okay, great. And then as far as taking the exam, is there cost associated with the exam, and is it available internationally?
Great question. Yes, I apologize for not covering that. It is $100 to take the exam. It's available worldwide, but it is only in English, so you'll need to be able to take the exam in English. That being said, you can use the extensions in Chrome to translate documents if you like. Flip back and forth between English and whatever language you want to read it in. And of course, you can change the admin console to your language of choice. So the exam is delivered in English, but you can get translations kind of on your own. They won't be that great, machine translations, but that's what people are doing.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gary, for joining us. Like I said, there's lots of great information about the exam, and I think one thing that I've noticed, whether you're an experienced admin or if you're just getting started, just the process of studying for the exam and then taking it is a really good way to familiarize yourself with the admin console and learn about some certain features that you may not normally be familiar with.
That's exactly right. Some of the feedback that we've got is that people who have studied for the exam are forced to learn things that they just don't normally mess around with, and it's really kind of expanded their understanding of administration.
All right, thank you, Gary. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and hop back into our presentation and get started with the rest of the admin console first steps. One thing that I wanted to note before we get started, it sounds like some people are having some issues with the video resolution on the event page. You may not be able to change the quality of the video. If that's the case, go to our YouTube channel and you'll find the Hangout on Air there. You'll be able to watch it there live. You won't be able to ask questions on our YouTube page, but you can watch it there and edit the screen resolution. So if you're watching it on the Google Plus event page, there's a YouTube icon in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. You can just click on that, watch it on our YouTube page, and if you'd like to ask questions, you'll have to go back on the Google Plus event page and ask them via the Q&A app. So I apologize for that. I'm not quite sure why you're not able to change the resolution to a higher, to a better resolution, but you can still make sure you can see all of the words on the screen via the YouTube page. So first of all, talking about the admin console first steps, as a Google Apps admin, the admin console is where you're going to spend the vast majority of your time, and it's where you're going to be making most of your important changes to your domain. You may need to use a third-party tool depending on what type of organization you are, but for the most part, most of you will be spending your time inside the admin console. So today we're going to be covering the initial steps that you need to take the first time that you access your admin console, whether your organization is new to Google Apps or maybe if you are a new admin handling Google Apps for your organization. And we're also going to tell you some steps that you need to take to ensure that you have long-term success with Google Apps. So setting yourself up early to make sure that your domain can kind of take care of itself along the line. And a big concern with managing a domain, obviously, is security and user management, so we're going to cover some key precautions that you need to take there. And like I said before, if you'd like to submit questions, you can do so via the Q&A app inside the Hangout on Air interface, so that needs to be done through the Google Plus event page. So first of all, navigating the admin console and accessing it, it's accessible in two main ways. You can go to admin.google.com and bookmark that for easy access later on. Or you can access it from your Gmail inbox through the new Chrome app launcher. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the admin icon right there, and that's an easy way to access it right there from your inbox. So what you're going to see for the first time when you're accessing your admin console, the admin console was redesigned fairly recently, so this is kind of a new view, but you'll see all of these apps and services in kind of a grid inside the admin console. So these are where you're going to be accessing the core features of Google Apps, and one thing that is important to note is that all these icons are customizable, their order, and you can also add some more controls through the bottom of your screen. So you'll see in that screenshot there's a little more controls section where some of your icons may be hidden. So that's definitely a place to check and make sure that there's nothing important down there that you're missing. And our suggestion is to kind of identify which apps and services that you need to use on a daily or however often you're accessing the admin console. Figure out what you're using the most and what's most important, and structure your admin console to fit those needs. Going into the admin console homepage a little bit more, on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see three icons. These are notifications, help and settings. So you could probably guess that the notifications icon is the bell with the number next to it. So this will give you some quick insight into important notifications for your domain, as well as new features to Google Apps, alerts coming from Google. For example, if there's an outage to Google Apps, you can find a notification there as well. The help section is where you can access some recommended support articles from Google. So these are, frequently asked questions that you may have about the admin console, and other relevant support articles. And the settings icon is where you can change some basic settings for your domain, and it's also a really good place to start off if you are new to Google Apps and the admin console. There's some tours and walkthroughs that they offer for the admin console, so that's definitely worth checking out. You can get kind of a walkthrough of the admin console and dive into it a little bit deeper. And then just below that in the right sidebar is some recent activity, tools, and common tasks. So this is a way to get some really quick insight into your domain activities over the past 7 days. So for example, you can see how many active users we have over the past 7 days, how many docs have been created. So this is something that's, can give you a quick idea of what's going on in your domain, and how many active users that you have, that sort of thing. You can quickly access reports from there as well. So below that, you'll see the Google Apps Marketplace and App Status Dashboard. I'll talk about the Marketplace a little bit later, but the App Status Dashboard is definitely a place that you want to be familiar with. This is where you will be notified if there's a major outage to a core Google Apps service. For example, if there's a Drive outage or a Gmail outage, you'll see that there. And so yeah, that's definitely worth checking out and being familiar with. So our major recommendations for our guru recommendation for navigating the admin console is to kind of approach the admin console as you would recommend users approach their Gmail inbox. We always like to say that you need to identify how you need to be using Gmail first before you can sort of organize it and structure it. So you should use the same approach for your admin console. Identify what apps and services that you need to be using, locate them, and then organize them based on how often they'll be used, which can help set yourself up for some long-term efficiency. So next, we're going to talk about managing your company profile. This is accessed through the company profile icon inside of the admin console. So here you'll be able to customize the look and feel of your domain, like actually editing the name of your organization, and also managing some important settings for your actual domain. So here, one of the important initial steps to take is just to confirm, or if you need to, edit the contact information for your domain. So you want to make sure the right person is set up as the primary administrator for your Google Apps account, and the secondary email address is important as well. You need to make sure that that's outside of your domain, and it's somebody who is in a senior level position that's going to be handling Google Apps, depending on if there's any personnel changes or anything like that. Next, we recommend turning on some key security features for Google Apps. This is accessed through the security icon in your admin console, and this is how you'll make sure that your users and your admins are protected across your entire domain. So security, like I mentioned before, is a major concern, for email and document management. So security is definitely something that you need to be familiar with and aware of when managing Google Apps. So our first suggestion, and these are some really simple security features that you can add to better secure your domain. The first is to enable SSL connections across your domain. So SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer Connections, and if you are familiar with Google Apps, you'll know that for 99% of cases, you're going to be accessing the core Google Apps features through SSL anyway. That's denoted by the HTTPS in your URL bar. So if you're looking at Gmail or Drive, for the most part you'll always see that. But if for some reason your users are accessing accessing Google Apps on an unsecure network, this is something that you want to have and make sure that is enforced across your domain. Another thing that we find to be very, very important is two-step verification. So if you're not familiar with two-step verification, this will require a user to enter in a specific code that's sent to their mobile phone whenever logging into a Google Apps service. So there's a couple different ways to do this. You can allow two-step verification for your domain, or a specific subset of users, which will allow them to opt in to two-step verification, or you can elect to enforce two-step verification, which is tricky because if your users aren't enrolled in two-step verification, they could actually be locked out of their account. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I'll show you a little bit later where you can check on the two-step verification enrollment. But so we suggest, if you are going to enforce two-step verification, or you feel that you need to, maybe a good place to start is with a select group of users. For example, your Google Apps admins, people that have management access to your domain. It's just a kind of a good rule to make sure that you're adding that little extra layer of security to your domain. So next, a next tool for Google Apps is to get some insight into how your domain and your users are using Google Apps, which is definitely really important. And Google has definitely improved this recently with a redesigned report section, which gives a lot more visibility across your domain and your users. And this is accessible through the reports icon in the admin console. So there's a number of different reports that are available here. You can see them on the left-hand side of that screenshot: highlight, security, apps usage, activity, account activity, audit, and also managing alerts. But the first thing that you'll see when you access reports is this highlight section right here. So the great thing about this is you get a really quick visualization of what's happened over the past month, and you can also adjust that time frame as you see fit. But you can see here my apps usage activity across our domain. It's a really good way to, in this case, see what type of activity our users have. Are they active with the platform? Are they using all of the tools that they should be using? And in security sense, if there's publicly visible documents, what are those documents? Who is sharing them publicly? And do we need to adjust that? So for example, in security, you can see our externally visible files. How many do we have visible externally, and who is allowing those files to be available outside our domain. You can also see what type of apps a user has used and installed that are external apps. So you might be saying, aren't all applications external? Not necessarily if you have some things that are built in-house, but if users are allowing external apps to access their information, that's definitely something that you want to be aware of. You can also see here in the in the security section of the report section, if a user is enrolled in two-step verification. So this is definitely worth checking out. Like I mentioned before, if you're going to allow or enforce two-step verification, definitely check here first and make sure that they are enrolled. and then you can, proceed there if you choose to enforce two-step verification. Okay, so security section, I think we covered that. Apps usage activity is the next section of the report. So, like I mentioned before, see if your users are actually using the product. This is it's great to have this information for two different ways. First of all, if your users are using the product, that means that they're obviously they're figuring out how to use it. You may not need to devote any more resources to training or change management. And if they are using it, do we need to purchase more storage? So you may know that Google Apps Storage is now consolidated across Gmail, Google Drive, and Google+. So if some users are spending a lot of time creating documents in Google Drive, or they have a lot of emails with a lot of attachments, you may need to purchase more storage. So this is a quick way to get some insight there. Next, and I think maybe one of the most important things, is managing alerts for your domain. So here you can set up email notifications for the most key changes across your domain. So this is if you're in a very small Google Apps domain and you're the only person that has super admin access to the admin console, then this may not seem that important to you. But if you're in a domain where there's multiple people with super admin access or admin access to a domain, you'll want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and if somebody is making changes to a domain. So, for example, if a user's been added or deleted, you'll want to be notified if that happens. And down there at the bottom, you can see the app's outage alert. This is definitely, I recommend, definitely enabling this and turning this alert on. It's important not only for you as an admin to know when services are down, but if you do know this and you can communicate this to your users beforehand, it may reduce the time that you have to have explaining, why is Gmail not working? Why is Google Drive not working? Why can't I access my email? That sort of thing. So getting out in front of those outages and communicating that to your users can definitely save you a lot of headaches. And so if another alert that is worth adding, I think, is if a user has been granted admin privilege. Like I said, if there's multiple Google Apps admins across your domain, you should definitely be aware of exactly who is an admin and who has those super administrator rights, just to make sure that for some reason or another, the wrong person doesn't have access. So our second guru recommendation, specifically dealing with reports, is use the new reports to surface security risks and possible training opportunities. So obviously, with reports, I think we can all understand the importance of identifying security risks. That's part of our job as a Google Apps admin, is to identify these security risks and solve them before anything bad happens. And I think training opportunities are important as well. If your users are familiar with the platform and are using it correctly, this can save you a lot of time and a lot of headaches from ongoing support along the way. So if you see that users aren't making good use of Google Drive and aren't creating documents, maybe it's time to do some hands-on training with how to create documents, how to share, the value of sharing and collaboration, that sort of thing. Depending on the size of your domain, the report section might be lacking. You might want a little bit more insight, a little bit more, access into exactly what type of activities your users are doing. You may want to look into some third-party management tools there. Next thing that is definitely worth checking on in the admin console when you're getting started is mobile device management. So that's accessible through the device management icon in the admin console. So depending on what type of experience you have with Google Apps. If you're a new admin for an existing domain, you may want to see exactly which devices are synced with Google Apps. And if you're just starting your own Google Apps domain, you might want to figure out how you can start enrolling people in mobile device management. So the two ways to allow your users to sync their Google Apps account with their phone or their mobile device is Android Sync for Android devices, and then Google Sync for everything else. So if you have a lot of iPhone, iOS users, Google Sync is what you'll want to enable there. Users will still need to opt into their corresponding syncs, so you can't, depending on what type of environment you're in, if you're in a BYOD environment, you'll need to talk with your users about correctly syncing their Google Apps account. This is kind of tricky because you'll need to do it using the Microsoft Exchange option for your email sync on your iPhone. So there's actually an article on that on the Google Guru website. If you search Google Apps Sync for iOS on the website, you'll be able to find that article there. It's a really easy to follow guide for setting up a Google Apps account for your iPhone. Another mobile device setting for security measures. This may not be for every type of organization. Like I mentioned, if you're in a BYOD environment and your users are bringing their own phones into the office, they may not want to have their phone locked down by a password. That may be up to them. But if you are providing devices to people and you want to make sure that there is that extra layer of security, you can require a password to be applied to their device. There are also lots of options available for managing Chrome devices. This is definitely, if you are using Chromebooks or Chromeboxes for meeting, this is definitely something that's worth exploring in depth. And having said that, we will cover it in much more detail on Thursday with our Chromebook management session hosted by David Huff, the CTO of Cloud Sherpas. So I would definitely, if you have Chromebooks or other Chrome devices on your domain, or you're thinking about purchasing them for your domain, definitely check out that session. That should be a great one. So next, you may be asking, all right, how do I set up the settings for the key Google Apps features? Where are the Gmail settings? Where are the Drive settings? So those are accessible through the Google Apps icons, and you'll find end user and admin settings located here. First of all, in Gmail, there's a lot of great end user settings here that you can find for compliance and security reasons. One thing that I think is, depending on what type of organization you are, if you are for example, if you're a law firm, you need to have some legal compliance for your outbound emails. You may want to append a footer, so this is where you can add your legal text saying that, this email is not to be shared with anyone other than the recipient, that sort of information. So appending a footer is definitely a great compliance tool to use. And there's also some other options there as well, like content compliance and objectionable content, that sort of thing. So this is where you'll find the compliance and security tools for end users. And if you are choosing to route your email, whether it's the inbound or outgoing emails, if you're routing it through another destination, you can also find this inside the Gmail section. And also, if you are setting up some specific spam filtering, you can do that here as well. Next, the next Google app that we want to focus on is Google Calendar. So one great thing that you may want to add here are calendar resources for your Google Apps domain. So here you can set up specific rooms or devices as resources so users can book them in their Google Calendar. This is really easy to set up, and it's definitely a great tool to use for Google Apps. One thing that I would mention when setting up resources is make sure you follow a very specific naming convention when you're setting up resources, and stick to that across your domain. That helps eliminate a lot of confusion when booking resources. And I think if you search naming conventions for Google Calendar, I think there's a lot of great information out there So it's definitely worth looking into. You also want to set and check and make sure that the default sharing settings for Google Calendars are set up the way that you would like. You can do this for your users' primary and secondary calendars. Next, and one thing that people are obviously concerned with when setting up user settings is for Google Drive. So it's definitely worth going in here and checking what are our default settings for Google Drive. If the user is creating a new document, how is this being shared automatically? It should be shared privately and obviously no higher than inside the organization when creating new documents. And depending on what type of organization you are, you may not even want users to share their documents outside the organization at all. Google Drive is a great way to collaborate internally, and if you want your users to only use Google Drive internally, then you can limit that here as well. We're going to go into Google Drive security in a lot more detail in tomorrow's session, Google Drive security. So I know a lot of you already signed up for that, but if you're not, definitely a session worth checking out. We'll cover what are some tools to secure your Google Drive, your users' Google Drive, and how can you ensure that your users are taking the proper precautions when using Google Drive. The next thing that you can add in the Google Drive section is access to Google Drive templates. This is a great step to take if your users are not familiar with Google Drive and need some help creating items. So you can enable that here in Google Drive, and your users can access these templates at docs.google.com/templates. And you can also access ours. We have a lot available on our website if you go to googleguru.com/templates. So this is a really good starting point if your users have specific business needs for Docs, for example. So if they need to set up accounting forms, payroll, that sort of thing, this is definitely a great place to start, and your users can customize those from there. So our third Guru recommendation is to set up mobile sync, calendar resources, and the Google Drive template gallery to help users leverage these key Google Apps features. So if your users are new to Google Apps, you want to give them that little nudge to make sure that they're leveraging the platform, because like I mentioned before, if they are taking advantage of all the tools they have available to them and they know how to use them, then they won't have to lean on you for support. So giving them these little nudges to use their mobile devices, to use calendars, to use Google Drive can really help encourage adoption. And with all that said, from a management standpoint, if you feel that the Google Apps Admin Console is lacking for your organization's needs in some shape or form, you may want to check out the new Google Apps Marketplace. This is accessible from the right sidebar of that homepage that we were looking at earlier. So you'll see it under Tools, Google Apps Marketplace. It'll take you to this brand new Google Apps Marketplace. It looks a lot like the Chrome Web Store, if you're familiar with that, and it's organized fairly similarly. Excuse me. So these are tools for across your entire domain. You can apply these for your users to have them use on their accounts, and you can also use them for limit them to your Google Apps admins. So it's a great place to start for just learning more about these third-party tools. You can see user reviews about these tools. You can see how many users have access to them and are using them, and it's a great place to evaluate and make decisions before installing a third-party tool. And so all the applications in this new Google Apps Marketplace use OAuth 2.0, single sign-on, and integrate with Google services. So these are great tools, definitely worth checking out, especially if you feel like you need to, if the admin console is missing a little bit of feature, or if your users need something else to add. And with that, we're going to take a look at some questions that you guys have. I know hopefully you guys were taking advantage of the Google moderator that we provided, and also through the Q&A app. So we have some good questions here that we're going to check out. If you're trying to access the form URL and for some reason you're not accessing it, I'll say again, it's googleguru.com/ATW. Make sure that you're spelling guru GOORU. I know it's not the correct way that we spell. This is not the correct way that you spell guru, but that's the name of the website. So it's googleguru.com/ATW. And this is how we send out the T-shirts, the ebook, and the Nexus 7. So if you're interested at all in receiving a T-shirt, the ebook, or being eligible for Nexus 7, which we're going to draw for at the end of the Q&A just in a few more minutes, please fill out that form. We're going to keep that open until the next session. We requested address 2, which isn't necessary for everybody, it looks like. So if that was a reason why you didn't fill out the form for some reason or another, it should be fixed so you can access that again and take a look. So yeah, so please take a moment to fill out that form. We'll keep that open until the next session. So yeah, so check that out. So our first question: what preparation do you recommend for the admin certification? Is there a curriculum on Guru? First of all, no, we don't offer a specific curriculum for the admin certification exam. But the ebook that we're offering in return for this admin training week will have a lot of great information about how you can prepare for the admin certification. And a lot of these tools that we'll cover throughout the week will help you prepare for the admin certification. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about it, you can go to certification.googleapps.com, and there's a study guide there that has a ton of great information as well. But I would say that throughout the week there'll be a lot of great hands-on training available, and the ebook will have some great information that you can reference at a later date. Can you take the next question? Can you take the admin certification again if you happen to fail it? And do you have to pay $100 again? I'm not sure about that. I'm sure you can submit that question to somebody from Google and get the information there. But you can definitely take the exam again. There's a waiting period that comes with these certifications. It's not specified, it looks like, on the site after, but it's not specified on the site for this specific exam. But for the other Google Apps exams like sales and deployment, there's a 2-week waiting period after you failed the first time, 60 days after the second time. Next question from Ryan. If I customize my admin console, is it customized for other admins in my domain? Great question. I'm not entirely sure about that. We're going to do a little bit of research and we'll come back to that towards the end. Pamela would like to know, is there a report to see Chromebook usage in the domain? As part of the reports redesign, in the old report section, yes, there was a way to see Chromebook usage, but in the new report section, unfortunately, that's not currently available. I would say that it's highly likely that Google brings that back. That's a feature that it sounds like a lot of people are interested in returning, and if Google wants to encourage Chromebook usage across schools and other organizations, people are going to want to know if they're using the Chromebooks. So reports are a big feature there, and I expect that to come back. Okay, so it looks like we have an answer here for the admin console customization. It looks like the customizations only apply to your specific account. So I'm sure that's good news for everybody. If one of your admins decides to organize the icons based off of how their specific task and their role, it won't affect how you view your admin console. You'll see how you customize it, and they will see how they customize it. Eileen wants to know, when setting up an admin account, whose name should be used? I'm an admin at 15 schools, and I'm assuming you would like to know, or you don't want to use your name for all 15 of these schools, which sounds like it's pretty reasonable. We recommend setting up the account as something generic, for example, administrator or admin at your domain, and then making sure that the right people for your domain have access to this account. So administrator at your domain is a great place to start, and then make sure for a school, for example, whoever the IT representative of that specific school is, make sure they have access, or anybody in the administration. Armando would like to know, is there a way to prevent my users from changing their profile picture in their Google Apps account? This is something that you won't be able to change inside the admin console. Specifically, you'll need to actually use a third-party tool, and you can't actually prevent a user from changing their profile picture. It's just how Google Apps works. The user has the power to change their profile picture, but using a third-party tool, you can reapply a new profile picture on a recurring basis. So, for example, you could apply the new profile picture on a daily basis to override anything that your user may have changed. So I mentioned it's not available in the admin console. You'll need to use a third-party tool. Flash Panel is a really good option here. I believe there was another question about email signatures in the same setting. If users are changing their email signatures, Flash Panel is also a great tool to use there if you'd like to make sure that an email signature is reapplying on a recurring basis. Next question here. So Elizabeth wants to know, in a Google Apps for Education domain, is it possible for the admin to log in as another user without changing or knowing their password? We periodically need to check in on students. So yes, you can do that. Flash Panel, which I just mentioned, is a great option for doing that. You can easily access your users' domains, and if you for some reason you need to change their password or something, you can do that as well in the account section of Flash Panel. So next question we have here: what's the best way to back up all the data of the user who is leaving an organization? So there's a lot of good backup options that you have available for Google Apps. We have a couple that we recommend and are actually two of our sponsors for Admin Training Week. So if you're interested, you can check out Backupify or Spanning. They are great options for Google Apps backup and definitely worth checking out, and also allow you to transfer your groups, drive files, that sort of thing. From Barbara asks, is there a way to set up so we don't have to permanently keep employees' emails active after they leave so we don't lose shared documents? Yes, you can keep those accounts active. They don't want to keep them active. Oh, you don't. So they don't want to keep them active. Sorry. Transfer them to the admin console. So you can. There's a couple of different ways to do this. You can, transfer them to depending on the organization that you're in. You can transfer them to a specific user if that person is absorbing their work, or you could transfer those files to a administrator account and have them there, and transfer your emails there, so you can make sure that you keep everything one place for users that happen to be leaving the organization. Is there a way to allow transfer of ownership of documents from a user in one domain to a user in another domain? This is a question that we get all the time, and unfortunately, there's just no way to transfer ownership of documents from one user to another outside a domain. You can see why, if you're depending on how you're approaching the problem, it can be either a problem or a benefit. I don't, if a user has malicious intent for one reason or another, you wouldn't want them to be transferring ownership. It makes sense, if you think about it, if you don't have any malicious intent, but I think from a security standpoint, the positives outweigh the negatives there. So the question is, I see how you can identify users and their respective number of publicly viewable files, but how do you drill down into the actual files so you can actually take action on that and correct that publicly shared file? I mentioned it before, but this is another case where you need to use a third-party tool, and FlashPanel is a great option there as well, so definitely worth checking out. Unless we have any more questions here, that wraps up our first session of Admin Training Week as far as the questions are concerned.